Okay, so just to make sure you understand, I'm going to put over here step one. Um, Create the tables that store your test data. And I know that's small. Give me a second, I'll do it. Move it up here. And we'll make this a little bigger. So we'll just say SSIS design pattern for testing bulk loads. So step one, create the table or query that contains your test data. Step two, export to a text file. Okay, that's going to become the load that you're going to load into everything, right? Okay, so that's this step here. So what I've done for step one is I created that text file table and I populated it with my 120,000 rows. And then I used the data flow task to simply say, take the data in that table, copy it out to a text file. Just a straight copy, nothing fancy. And that's how we came up with the big file.txt. Nothing fancy. You do not have to use my data. You can make this your own data. That's totally fine. I'm trying to make it to where you can understand how to do this on your own. All right, so now step three, create a test database and table to load data into. Okay, so this is where you need to go create. I used the load me database and I made it 3 gig data file on a 1.5 gig log. And that's what I loaded everything into for my test. What you don't want to have happen, you don't want to have the transaction log have to grow during your load. Okay, so here's one step. Set the recovery model for your test database to bulk logged. Okay, so we talked about that a little earlier. Move that here, actually. Let's go ahead and do that. Okay. This not only allows for faster loads, but it ensures that our transaction log will not fill up as we're just doing a few rows, a couple of million at a time. Okay. Is there any way that I can get this to all fit up here? So this would be like step two, create the text file, right? And then from here, now you can run all of your tests to do this. Okay, so once you've built this, now you can run your tests. Now let's take a look at each one of these. They're all the same. If we take a look and we drill down, you could see here we've got 4 data flow tasks being tested. These 3, sorry, I don't know how I did that. These 3 use a SQL Server destination. And this one down in the bottom uses a OLADB destination. Other than that, they're just plain old data flow tasks that have a flat file source and a destination. There are no transformations between them. There's nothing fancy. Do you recognize this icon right here? Do you know what that is? That's a sequence container. You see, there needs to be a sequence of things, and the sequence that we have is we have step number one. Every single one of these that we have has, let me see if I can get that to go away. I didn't. There we go. What is that? I don't even know what that is. A bug maybe? So every task has 5 steps. Let's Every test has 5 steps. So step 1 is our table prep. Okay, step 1's job, actually I'm going to put this over here in a annotation here. So each test has 5 steps. And again, I'll build this up a bit. Step 1, table prep. Delete table and clear buffers. The buggers. And what we mean by clearing the buffers is we don't want one particular step to benefit from a previous step having loaded the data in memory. That would potentially really mess up our timing. So this contains really 2 statements, one to truncate the table and one to clear the buffer cache, clear the memory. The drop clean buffers statement here, that basically says whatever is in memory that is data, clear it out. Okay, we don't want it. So we're starting every iteration with the exact same buffer cache. It's empty. Okay? And we're dealing with an empty table. So we're loading an empty table. Now step 2 is start the timer. So this is what our stopwatch variable is used for. Now, this is actually a .NET stopwatch, and we're just going to start the stopwatch. Now step 3 would be to perform the load the data. Step 4 would be to calculate execution time. Because we have to, again, we have to tell the stopwatch to stop and then figure out how long it took for the stopwatch to execute. And then finally, step 5 is write this info out to finalresults.xls, because that's where we want to view the data. So there are 5 steps. Every test, you can see this one has 5 steps. We go to this test, it has 5 steps. We go to the tests. I know you believe me, but we go to the T-SQL test. You can see they all have 5 steps. They all are the same thing. Okay? So taking a look just at, we'll start with the first one, the data flow task default settings. I'll show you the timer. I happen to use C# for this one. And we're going to put in our task description and a stopwatch here. And we say edit the script. Now we assign, I just saw that. Seems to be a bug. I have the task description assigned as read only, and yet I'm writing to it here, and I don't get an error message. So notice right there, it is a read only variable. That really should be a read write variable. I see that now. But it works. It let me get away with a bug there. Strange. Now, as we talked about in, what is it, maybe chapter 5 or chapter 4, how to use the stopwatch class to start and store that stopwatch in a DTS variable so that we can access that in a later script task. So we talked about that. It was either chapter 4, I believe it was the beginning of chapter 5, we talked about how to do this. But we are assigning the task description to be the name of the container, and we're starting the stopwatch, so you can see that we start it. Come back over here. The next step is to load the data. Hey, look, nothing fancy. Flat file source, that we load up our flat file. It's got those columns, and we just use a SQL Server destination, and we just accept the defaults. We're loading this table. Nothing fancy. Don't change anything over here. That's it.